Joe, welcome back to the pirate ship. How's the book writing process going?
It's looming, it's coming up, but I am very confident I will get it done on time.
Awesome. And this is book number what for you now?
I mean, it depends on how you count it, like 6, 8, somewhere in there. 5.
And just for the others that are aspiring to be Joe Pine, does it get easier?
Yes and no. Specifically means some books are easier than others. One book I wrote one chapter a week for the summer, and it was perfect. It didn't require near the amount of research that this one does. This one requires a lot of research. I'm looking at all these books. I have to think really hard, and some others already know it all, right? And I just write what I know. There's some aspects of that in this book where I'm just able to pretend I'm giving a presentation and I just type up what I know. But other aspects I got to really think hard about. And you don't really know a subject, Eddie and Chris, until you write it, right? Until it gets down, and then you figure it out.
Well, I want to get into the part of your transformation Substack and what will ultimately be in your book that we were so excited to jam with you on. I wanted to call out the phrase that you called out is in gaining freedom from the tyranny of time, we transport ourselves. And we're writing about how to, escape the world of trading time for money. Have you had a transporting experience yourself in writing about transporting experience? We call it thinker's high.
Yeah,
I'm curious if you've had that.
Yeah, I have. In fact, I can demonstrably prove I have, according to the app 6 from Paul Zak's Immersion Neuro. If you know Paul Zak, famous neuroscientist, right? He's come out with an app called 6, looking for 6 key moments during the day, and it ties into my Fitbit, so where it knows what's going on in my brain, my blood flow, and everything. And there are times it says, literally the phrase, this was a euphoric moment for you. And I look back, what was it? It was writing. Right? It was writing. When you get into it, writing is one of those things when you can get into flow. And so the statement you made, the freedom from the tyranny of time, is actually Mihai Csikszentmihalyi's phrase where he describes what flow gives us. It's just where all sense of time washes away. And it can happen in playing games, in writing, in dancing, and singing, and doctors do it in the operating theater and so forth. And it's that point when the challenge in front of you very closely matches your skills, right? What Csikszentmihalyi says, that if your challenges are too great for your skills, you get anxiety, right? You don't feel like you can handle it, which I have occasionally. And if the challenge is too low for your skills, then it's boredom, right? You can easily handle it. And it's that in-between dance that you get that gives you that euphoria. And you're sitting there, writing for an hour and a half and you felt like 20 minutes, went by because it just is flowing out of you. I mean, it's a great term, flow. So that is one of the ways that you can have what I now call transporting experiences.
That explanation of flow was amazing. Christopher, you looked like you were going to jump in on something there.
Well, first of all, Joe, just to be 1,000% clear, we adore you. We think you are one of the most important business thinkers of the last 30 plus years. And I can remember in the late 90s when Experience Economy came out, I can remember reading it and going, holy shit. And it influenced my work immediately. And when Al Ramadan and I were helping Macromedia with their category design, we centered the whole company on experience, and it worked, and it was right. And you saw that early. And you've continued with breakthrough insights. And so we love your brain. And I just love that you're around. I love being around you. I love hearing what you're working on. And it's really an honor and a thrill to have you in our lives. We fucking think you're legendary. So let me start there.
Well, it's hard to follow that up with anything, Christopher, but thank you very much. That's very gratifying. And I'll say back at you for both of you. Love your work, love your books, love the idea of category pirates. And I remember that work with Al, in Macromedia. The experience is everything. So it was very good stuff.
I don't think I'd ever heard that definition of flow where the difficulty matches the skill set perfectly with it. That guy, Alex Honnold, the rock climber guy, who he filmed himself free climbing El Capitan, and the whole time, he's going to live because he's still alive after the show. But the whole time I'm just like,
you're sweating,
afraid he's going to die and we're going to watch it and the like. But to me, I was like, oh, okay. That explains why he does what he does, because his skill level is so high. For him to get to flow, and flow is a wonderful place to be, he has to continue to challenge himself. I think, Christopher, for us, it explains why we are okay and have, the bet that we made on mini books works because we had a belief that there were people out there willing to invest more time than 600 words or 1,000 words or whatever. And I think what it dovetails very nicely with the whole concept of super consumers out there. I don't know if you've gotten feedback from clients and companies in this one, because like our experience is that the large companies, it's lowest common denominator, right? They want all the customers out there. So they don't care so much about flow. They're going to reduce the degree of difficulty or the level of what is required to experience it for the lowest common denominator consumer. And that very few people are actually willing to put something out there that is designed for the super consumer that will pay a premium for it. But in part, it's because they don't appreciate how much more willing they are to kind of go through and their skill level as somebody who's a participant in the category.
Right. And ignoring those possibilities really is a route to self-commoditization, right? You're commoditizing yourself if you're looking at the lowest common denominator, right? Because you got to then standardize things. You've got to not focus on what many people truly want and need. And flow is just one of those things that through which that happens.
Christopher, I imagine what is you have the Shelby, your Mustang. I'm guessing it's not the easiest car to drive.
It's actually easier to drive than you might think. I expected it to be a beast, like literally holding it back. That's not the experience. However, it is a 668 horsepower Shelby Cobra Mustang with all of the power in the back two wheels. And you can wrap yourself around the lamppost really fast in this car if you don't know what you're doing. When people buy these kinds of cars, it's mostly dudes. There's a surprising number of them who smash them on the way out the dealer. As a matter of fact, I looked into buying a 1,000 horsepower Ford F-150 Raptor from the aftermarket tuner Hennessy. I thought this might be a fun thing to do. And the Hennessy sales guy was telling us about people literally drive it off their lot, hit the accelerator and smash it into the wall next to the dealer. And so, yes, it's a lot of power and you need to learn how to drive it, because just going out from a cold start, making a left or a sharp right out of a stop signal, you can spin yourself around.
So crashing it out the dealer is not meet the definition of flow, Joe, I assume.
No.
It's a very defining experience that you will remember.
That's right.
But
definitely you'll remember that.
But if I could, Joe, I just love what you're doing here, because I read I'm gonna F up his name, Csikszentmihalyi's.
I practiced that for a number of years. Csikszentmihalyi, yes. Mihai Csikszentmihalyi's.
Yeah, I'm always trying to practice it because I admire him so much. And I actually took his book Flow on a surf dive boat trip years ago. I'll tell you, it's a heavy lift to try to read that thing. It really is. But it's worth the heavy lift. And in addition to Mikhail, whose first name is easier than his last name, God rest his soul, I've also become a huge fan of Stephen Kotler's. And his latest book stands on top of Mikhail's work. It's called The Art of Impossible. And he talks a lot about flow and how being in a flow state allows you to achieve things that heretofore either you or others might have thought is completely impossible. And it's a riveting book. And so when I saw that what you were doing was connecting what is arguably, if not the most important human state, maybe one of the top 2 or 3 human states, that is of flow, and putting it in a business context and building an argument that says companies that deliver experiences, and this is going to sound like I lived on the West Coast a little too long, but that transcendent quality to them, where you're omnipresent in them. I experience flow doing physical things a lot, skiing, surfing. When you're on a great wave, you are in flow. When you're on a great powder run, you are in flow. And I love the flow. Eddie and I and Katrina experience this every week when we write. Writing in flow is an insanely legendary thing. We call it, as Eddie, I think, mentioned, thinker's high. And so the fact that you are now providing us with insight, a roadmap, an approach to, if we want to build a legendary business that's centered on transformative experiences for people that they really remember and value, how do we create flow for people in our products and services? That, Joseph, is a legendary question. And I can't wait for you to educate us more on the answers to said question.
Well, I'll go backwards a little bit to get back to that, because basically what I've discovered, and not all of it's new, but what I've discovered is that there are 4 different levels of experiences. The minimum level, for my terminology, for Eddie, the progression of economic value, where experiences are a distinct economic offering, is that they have to be memorable. Right, like you say, you crush into a wall, you're always going to remember that. They have to be memorable. They engage us, create that memory. What a lot of people talk about experiences today, particularly around customer experience, is not memorable. It's nice, easy, convenient. Right? That's really the service level. So you have to create a memorable experience, and a memorable experience engages us. Right? Again. Then secondly, there are meaningful experiences that connect to who we are, not just engage who we are. One of the things I think we saw coming out of COVID, where the experience economy was decimated because you didn't want to gather with anybody, is that we had this thirst for meaning in our lives, for this meaningful experiences, so that we could get together with our family, our friends, our loved ones, even our colleagues, even complete strangers in an arena and so forth. So that rises to another level of meaningful experiences that's more connective to us. Then come the transporting experiences, and transporting experiences take us out of who we are. Everything washes away. So flow is a key way of doing that. Another one is awe, right? Where you have an awe experience, often in front of God's creation in nature somewhere, seeing a sunset, seeing a beautiful canyon, climbing mountains and hiking and so forth, as well as some other experiences that people create, including in front of great art. You may have an awe experience where you're not thinking about yourself, you're thinking about things outside of you. And then you can also think of Maslow's term of peak experiences, right, where you do get into that euphoria, and your thinker's high is a peak experience as well. And all of those.
Now, Joe, I hate to interrupt you, but when speaking about some of these topics, I have friends who go to Burning Man. Most people think I must be a burner. I'm actually not. It's not my thing at all. But I have many friends who it is their thing. It's just going out in the desert and being disgusting for a week. It's not really my thing. When I first heard you were writing in this direction, I thought, is Joe now shilling for the psychedelics industry? Is Joe now the key marketing partner for those here in California and much of the West Coast who are trying to legalize mushrooms and other psychedelics? So unpack some of this psychedelic speak here, Joseph.
Right. So the short answer is no. I'm like avoiding the entire topic, right? Although I know a lot of people who are into it, who do that sort of thing. And certainly it is a way to have a transporting experience, right? Absolutely. It is a way. But I think there are much better ways of being able to do that. But people will definitely desire that more. I mean, it's something that's been around forever, obviously, but you see a great uptick in how people want to do that because they are looking for those. As you both alluded to or mentioned, right? Once you have one high, you want to have another high. Often you got to go to a different level, right? So, and that's the problem once you get into drugs and psychedelics is you always got to go more and more and more, and eventually that can kill you. So it's one of the reasons why I'm avoiding the topic. Whereas in other things, you can get that more. I can always write another book, get that thinker's high again, without having to put myself in danger.
Well, Joe, I know it's interesting on that because I do think if you integrate it within your framework of, well, you can take psychedelics, but is it memorable? Is it meaningful? And does it produce awe as well as transport you? Like, I think that's a very helpful way because I'm trying to think if you've addressed this directly, even though I know you're avoiding some of the topics, but like, there's probably not all transformations are created equal. And not all transformations are beneficial at some level, right? Like you can be
beneficial or edifying or deleterious is
yes.
two big words I like to use on those.
Yes. So, because the difference in here's what's interesting is that there's this, and I think being wise about this is why I'm so excited that you're writing about it. So Kristen and I, we were in Tahiti recently, and one of the things I wanted to do was dive with whales. Christopher, when we were back riding in Hawaii one time with Cole, we were on the boat, the 3 humpback whales, their tails kicked up right in front of us. And that was amazing. And I think Tahiti and Samoa were one of the 2 places in the world that allow legally you can do this. And, there's no guarantee that you'll do it, but we ended up seeing them. My video of it is grainy, but close enough to tell that they were there, but not so close that it would have been too scary because, as you said, too much awe, too close, and I probably would have been very, very frightened. And that there's another dive outfit on Oahu on the North Shore. I think Christopher may have mentioned this. Is this woman, Ocean Ramsey, is a marine biologist, and she's famous for riding Deep Blue, the 20-foot great white. Like, she's holding onto the dorsal fin, is an amazing diver, and she'll take people out. And my eldest, Mia, came with me, and she loves water and everything. So, we get in, the sharks are about 20, 30 feet around below, and you're there. It's cool. And then I see all the people swim in one direction, all the professional divers. I'm like, what's going on? And I see a tiger coming towards us. Right. And it's one of those, do I want this transporting experience or not? Like, there's many ways I can be transported, but like, clearly the people there were excited to see the shark. And there were enough people between me and the tiger, which was probably, I don't know, 10, 12 feet long, that I was like, well, I'll be all right. But then I see my daughter, who got into the boat, come back out of the boat to get back in the water as soon as she saw the tiger. And I was like, is this evidence of a good dad or a bad dad? I'm not sure which one it is, but how do we discern which transporting experiences are good or bad? Because clearly, if you over abuse drugs to the point where you destroy your life, there's that. Thinker's high, maybe a little more benign type of a thing. But then there are other things in between where, as you said about awe, there is a risk and a danger to it, and there's some wisdom behind that. But I don't know if you have a way of helping us navigate which ones are beneficial, as you said, versus deleterious.
Yeah, I love how your thought about the tiger shark is that there's 12 people between me and it.
You don't have to outrun the shark, just the slow stick.
The old bear story, right? You don't have to outrun the bear, just have to outrun you. So it's something I haven't thought a lot about in the context of this book. But also, I used those two big words earlier, so I'll define them now if you don't know. Edifying means building up, right? An edifice is a building, so you're building up. And are you building up yourself? Are the experiences that you have going to be ones that are going to be beneficial to you? They're going to pay dividends now and into the future. Is it not just time well spent? Is it time well invested, right? Investing in who you are, because every experience we have changes to at least a degree who we are. We're all the product of our experiences. It cannot help but do that. And then there are ones that are clearly deleterious, right? Meaning tear you down, right? They lessen your capabilities. They lessen your power. They lessen what you can do in the world. And so they start to break you down. So it is just to be, I would say, just to be aware of that. But if something makes you pause, then take that pause as a signal that you ought to be thinking about this a little more, right? And do you want to do it? Do you not want to do it? Is it going to build you up, or is it going to tear you down? And when you think about doing that as well, think about your relationships, right? Think about your spouse, think about your children, think about your parents, think about your friends. Is it going to impact or have the potential to impact them? And particularly anything that anybody describes as addictive in any way, right? So still to this day, I'm not on Facebook, on Instagram. Never going to happen. I made that decision. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on LinkedIn. That's it, right? Because I got business reasons. I don't want to personally open myself up to a time sink. Right?
This is wonderful to think about at a personal level. When we talk about category design to companies that are interested in it, and I'm sure you get this when you've talked about becoming an experience economy company, like, I do feel like not only is the economic potential much, much higher, but the amount of risk and responsibility when it comes to transporting experiences, assuming you're not selling heroin or whatever as your business, but like there's some probably gray areas of where, yes, in a certain context, in a certain timing, this can be very edifying. In others, it can be deleterious. I have not found that large companies in particular are great at wisdom and stewardship of knowing what is the right amount of difficulty, and is this transformation going to be helpful? To your point, the intimacy required to understand, is this going to pay dividends for you, but also how will it impact your family relationships? Like, it strikes me that you'd have to be so specific and so incredibly focused. Like, when, like, Christopher, the thing that we're writing now about, paid to be different, this idea of the creator economy, it is a wonderful idea in a world where companies have no loyalty to employees and you need to kind of chart your own future. However, we had somebody who said, I want to be a creator, I want to join the creator economy and do this, and quit their job in a way that was deleterious for their family. The timing wasn't right. Like, I feel a very deep responsibility and burden for that. And I can imagine navigating it as a small e-entrepreneur in a small category design situation. But like, I'm just trying to think through some of the companies that you've worked with, like, the big, Royal Caribbeans and the Disneys of the world. Like, it would seem like there's a degree of risk that I'm not sure how these large companies can manage the transformation economy.
Yeah, that's a very insightful thing. It's going to be much more difficult for large companies to at least go out there at the higher levels of transporting and transformative experiences because of exactly what you say. I think about Tough Mudder, has a death waiver. Burning Man, which I've never been to as well. I'm not sure they have the death waiver, but I know they tell you, just like my wife just got new lenses in her eyes, right, for cataracts. And in there it said, don't make any major decisions for the next 24 hours. Well, Burning Man, I think they say like 2 weeks. Don't make any major decisions for 2 weeks after you've been there, because there is that effect and you sort of a potential effect and it going in. And Burning Man is also an example I've used of going to the fourth level of experiences, right? So we talked about memorable experience of engaging who you are, meaningful experiences about connecting to who you are, transporting experiences about getting you out of who you are, and transformative experiences change who you are, right? So those are those experiences that do in fact make a change, at least in degree, if not in kind, that where your identity becomes different in some way, where you can say, I was X, but now I am Y, right? Those are all transformative experiences. Burning Man, in case almost everybody, I'm told, that goes to Burning Man, Christopher, says, I was transformed, right? Burning Man changed me, right? Use some variations of that. But in fact,
and I know people who've been going for the better part of 20 years who say it transforms them every year in different ways.
Right. And in fact, I'll say, yes, but that transformation really doesn't take hold until after the event, until after that 2 weeks, right? Because with any sort of experience, to make it transformative, you need what I now call encapsulation. You need to encapsulate that experience in, number one, preparation ahead of time to best prepare you for the experience, to sort of prime it, thinking about, what could this be, anticipate it, thinking about where you're at in your life and what might need changing and so forth, depending on what the experience is. And then after the experience, you need to reflect on it. You do need to say, okay, what happened? What did really connect with me? What did I enjoy? What change does this seem to say that it made in my life? But then you've got to integrate that change, right? That's that third phase of encapsulation: preparation before, reflection, integration after. And integrating that change does take work, does take often guidance from people, from companies rather, that can help guide that transformation and make sure that it actually does take hold, that it's sustained through time, right? So that time was in fact well invested. And so all four of those are the levels of experiences that you can stage, and those higher ones are going to be more difficult for bigger companies, at least on some levels.
So I have a prediction based on this, one that'll be very beneficial to Christopher's client friend, Gina Bianchini, is that what you are describing, the amount of preparation before the transporting experience and the amount of reflection afterwards, tells me that the way that a large company can navigate this, not only just legally, but responsibly in a way that is economically viable, because if you do it well in a positive, edifying transformation, lifetime value goes up. If it's deleterious, lifetime value goes down. So that just the economic argument is that you must do it in community, and that the prediction that I have is that this will be the telltale sign if large companies can get there or not, is are they willing to give up control in the way that companies like Apple have not been willing to, of opening up the ecosystem to the masses, right? But give up control, not to everybody, but to small groups. And that the businesses that look much more like healthy churches at some level, right, Joe? Like the idea of yes, you may be part of a thing, it's an individual transformation experience, but there's a small group that is with you, helping you prepare for the experience and then helping you reflect and try to understand what happened. It's only in a group where you have some accountability, some shared purpose and meaning that you're going in the same direction, but that it's only in that context could I envision somebody leading someone to a transporting experience in a responsible way that generates and maximizes lifetime value. For that to be true, the large company has to turn over control of the transformation and the experience outside of themselves. And we'll see if they can actually do that or not. But that's my prediction.
Yeah, that's very interesting. It's working with cohorts as opposed to just individuals, right? And I think that's a very, very valid thing to do. The thing about control of transformations is, and I love how you say like Apple could never do this because of that, but they is you actually don't have control from the start. Is that people only change themselves. You can't change them. You can create the conditions under which they can change if they're willing to step over that threshold. So you don't have control, even though you might want it. But there are many big businesses that are in the transformation business that need to think about this, at least ostensibly in the transformation business they thought about it. And I love using Ben Franklin's phrase of healthy, wealthy, and wise. Any businesses in the business help people be healthy, wealthy, or wise is in the transformation business. So you got the three of the biggest industries in the world of healthcare, of financial services and wealth management, and of education. They're all should be in the transformation business, but very few recognize that. And part of the problem may be the big company disease that you're talking about.
There's another part of this that I find interesting. And in the spirit of full disclosure, I'm working with a startup in this area. And it's such a profound insight. And when I understood it, I saw something that I'd never seen before. And the insight goes like this. If you are a consumer product company, you have very rich data and insight around everything that happens on the front end. Some people call it the funnel, whatever you want to call it. Everything that happens up until they buy. And then when they buy, there's this giant canyon, gap, Grand Canyon fuck hole. And you don't know what they do. You don't know how they experience your product. You don't know what they're doing with your product. You don't know if they're elated with it, pissed off with it, somewhere in between. You don't know what more of the thing that it does that they want. You don't know anything about anything. And then the next interaction you know of is when they're pissed off. And now you juxtapose that to a software company or a tech company like Apple. Apple knows every single thing we do with their product. And they know stuff about us we don't know. You've heard the stories of women saying TikTok knew I was pregnant before I did, and things along these lines that are extraordinary, right? Because when you're in the digital business, you can have the most radical customer intimacy and knowledge of the experience and transformations and beyond that they're having. When you're in the analog product business, you have this massive hole, this gap, and for lack of a better term, this lived experience with your thing gap, an LX gap. The company I'm talking about is called -LX, and the LX stands for lived experience. And they are in the business of helping analog companies digitize the experience that their customer has such that that hole goes away. And you have the most valuable insights that any business leader can have, which is, what is the actual experience of using, of being with, of living with my thing doing for the customer? And so this ability to understand what's happening to your customer during the experience of your offering is arguably one of the biggest holes in business, particularly for any kind of an analog company. And the fact that you've put your finger on this is stunner.
Can I build on that? To your point, Christopher, any of my food and beverage clients over the years that have been in the diet space or nutrition space, and which obviously have not had the impact as the obesity rates continue to climb. You have that phenomenon in the legacy analog product world. And then to your point about the Apple knowing everything, I think I saw somewhere of it, Tim Cook gave an interview that said that he believes that Apple's impact on healthcare is going to be its greatest legacy. Now, I could see that possibility, just given everything that you said, Christopher, that they know everything about it. However, here we're gonna drop some. This is $1 billion worth of free consulting advice for Tim Cook and Apple. Is that if he wanted to fix the Vision Pro, he would pick one transporting and transformation experience and niche down on that. Because if he really had the courage of his convictions that the greatest legacy of Apple is to help people be healthier, healthy, wealthy, and wise. I mean, pick any one of those 3 lanes would be amazing, right? But if I put on the Vision Pro, there's me, Ghost of Christmas Future, Charles Dickens style, unhealthy version and healthy version. Which one do I want to be? Right? There's me in nature enjoying a walk in the mountains, but here's me 20 pounds overweight with bad knees. How am I enjoying that versus that one out there, right? I mean, because it's what we know. I know this from all the healthcare work that I've done is that these kind of the trigger moment when you decide to change your behavior and transform, they're hard to predict, and they're often mixed feelings. Like I remember this one guy, well, the work I did with Rogaine back in the day was it wasn't people calling out that they were losing their hair from a very close loved one, a spouse or child. It was somebody one step removed. Like this one guy was like, my granddaughter said to me, Grandpa, you don't have a forehead, you have a five head. And that's what triggered him to go do something about it, right? Because he was like, okay, I care about you, but I'm not going to tune you out like my wife and this and that with it. But I think pairing Vision Pro with the Apple Watch, and as you said, Christopher, they know everything about you, and let's niche down. Let's make people healthy and put the entire power of AR against this and help them envision the future that they want to see, which will help them perhaps be triggered to, as you said, help them make the decision that only they can make. And lastly, they should partner with the Mighty Networks, or frankly, they should buy our buddy Carl Dakeler's business at Beachbody and combine community with all of this stuff, because that's in my mind, if their Apple stores became a gathering place for people trying to get healthy, that's how you would actually transform people.
Absolutely. And I just put in the chat, there's a great Semaphore article recently about Microsoft's massive AI healthcare focus. And if you step back and think for a second, and you know even a little about where we are right now with AI, an immediate conclusion you come to is, holy shit, if we're ever going to cure cancer, it's going to be because of AI. If we're ever going to cure Alzheimer's, it's going to be because of AI, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. AI is how we cure disease. And I know enough about the AI world, less so about the healthcare world, to know the likelihood that we solve cancer in our lifetimes, it's almost a certainty that it'll happen now.
Amazing.
I love what you said, Eddie, about Apple. Like, that free advice is great advice. Right? Go deep on something with the Vision Pro. In healthcare, there's a lot of things. I remember working with the hospital once where they wanted a virtual reality room for a whole host of reasons to get people to continue on the path of recovery in particular. And then there's just a ton that could be done there. One thing I'll mention is I love Dash LX, right, Christopher? I love that.
I've been with them since they've started, and it was one of these visions that the first iteration of the company was 5 years ago. When Adam, the founder, really got it was about 2 years ago when it snapped, and the technology was there and so forth. And they started off in the athletic sports world, and I can't name names, but if you think of very big sporting goods brands, clothing brands and the like, you'd be in the right direction. And what they figured out, and there's one shoe company in particular, and I don't know that I can name them, so I won't, but the CEO of this shoe company said to Adam that now that he has been working with what they call LX data, lived experience data, that is that gap between I buy your product and I disappear, and maybe you never hear from me, or maybe you hear I'm pissed off, or maybe I send whatever it is, but you don't know what happens with your product. A CEO of a very serious athletic shoe company recently said to Adam, I don't know how we ever ran this place without the LX data. It's the nervous system for our company, because now we're in deep with our customers. And the same CEO took about 2 years of convincing to even do a pilot.
Well, you just said it, Christopher, and maybe we'll end on this, is that I think for folks, everybody should read Joe's Substack on transformation, buy his book with it. But in particular, CEOs, if you take your role as steward for your shareholders' capital seriously, you will look at this idea of transformation very, very intently. But also know that for this to work, you must be in relationship with your consumers for the rest of their lives, as much as they will have you. And if you treat them transactionally, they won't trust you to let you transform. You must be in relationship, and it's only when the consumer knows you are with them, the brand is with them, the business is with them, and you are one of them, that they will trust that, okay, I will hold your hand and let me transform. Because to your point, Christopher, the stuff around AI solving cancer, no doubt, it's so exciting as we become compute unconstrained. But I think this idea of Apple can get started with this now, of starting breast cancer survivor communities little cohorts around that and say, let's get together people, because it's not the dealing with the disease and prevention and diagnosis and all that. It is all of the lived experience of how do you handle somebody in your family who's dying of breast cancer. How do you navigate all of that? Like, my wife has been an oncology nurse, and like, she's been a nurse in the most horrible situations. And I always say, like, the greatest gift that she has is the ability to know how broken the healthcare system is, but importantly, how it impacts relationships. That a DNR doesn't mean that a wayward uncle or brother can't screw it all up. And she has the lived experience and the wisdom to know what is a edifying, literally transporting experience of navigating from life to death, as you kind of wrote, Joe, and what is a deleterious one, even though that some people may mistake the edifying for the deleterious. And I do hope that Apple, with all of the wealth that they have on their balance sheet, gets really serious behind it, because the greatest innovation, as you said, with AI may not be the technology. It just may be in the wisdom associated that's resident in the book of how do you help people navigate from here to there in a way that is healthy, wealthy, and wise.
To that end, I have a question here, and I've actually thought lots about this. I think one of the reasons many of us love doing business, patronizing small businesses, small local businesses, is the level of give a fuck can be very, very high. So, for example, my favorite restaurant is about 6 blocks from my house, and it's run by 2 Italian dudes, like very Italian, and one of their spouses who's an American gal. And you think about a restaurant, this is a category of business that's been around for a very long time. And the level of give a fuck in this restaurant is beyond explanation. And so the experience one has is of being in your Italian grandmother's living room, even if you didn't have an Italian grandmother, which I didn't. And they love their customers, and they're fun, and they're funny, and the entire staff treats you like family. And you compare that to, by way of example, Olive Garden. And Olive Garden, first of all, the food's disgusting, but put that to the side. You have an experience of being processed, of being manufactured, of going through an assembly line when you eat at a place like that. And so my question specifically is, to jump off of Eddie's point, how does a major corporation, a Fortune S&P 500 consumer-facing company, execute at massive scale with my beloved Italian restaurant's level of personalization, experience, flow, and give a fuck?
It's just impossible, right? Impossible. They can't do it. So, but there are other things that they can do better than your local Italian restaurant, including with the scale that they have. And in Eddie, in response to what you're saying, I think what every big company needs to do is understand, what business are you really in? And what is your business? Are you there to extract and sell commodities, to manufacture goods, to deliver services, to stage experiences, or to guide transformations? And no matter what level you're there, the next key thing to ask is, what is the end to which my product is the means? Whatever you're selling today is a means to an end. And they have to ask that 5 times, but that true end is the aspiration that people have. And how can you better deliver that aspiration? Because there's no more economic value you can create than to help someone achieve his aspirations.